Pakistan thought it could play a double game with terror groups for decades, meticulously cultivating proxies to secure its interests.
Right.
But the violent collapse of the Afghan border ceasefire proves this strategy has finally, well, catastrophically blown up in its face.
It really has. A major turning point.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. Our mission today is to give you a rapid but comprehensive understanding of a dangerous new geopolitical reality.
Exactly. We're diving deep.
We're unpacking the failure of that 48-hour ceasefire between Afghanistan and Pakistan that ended on October 17th, 2025.
And this isn't just, a breakdown in diplomacy.
No, it feels like much more. It's the dramatic culmination of a policy failure, years in the making.
Decades, really.
The trigger for this immediate deep dive was particularly gruesome, just hours before that fragile truce expired.
Yeah, that attack in North Waziristan.
A suicide bomber and gun attack targeted a Pakistani military camp there, killing 7 Pakistani paramilitary troops. That attack really cemented the immediate crisis.
And what's crucial for you, the listener, to understand is that the situation in North Waziristan isn't just another flare-up. It's not just a skirmish.
It's bigger than that.
Oh, absolutely. It's the moment Pakistan's decades-long security policy, this whole idea of strategic support for militants, has finally come home to roost. It's turned against the state itself.
So the blowback.
We are watching the blowback of a deeply, frankly, cynical doctrine that defined their military and intelligence strategy for generations.
Okay, let's unpack this then. Let's go back to the origins, because we have to start with the foundational question here.
Makes sense.
Why did Islamabad, specifically its powerful military establishment, actively choose to support groups like the Afghan Taliban and the notorious Haqqani network, especially when facing immense pressure from the United States? It just seems counterintuitive on the surface.
It does, but it all boils down to a single, all-encompassing strategic doctrine, strategic depth.
Strategic depth, we hear that term a lot.
You do. And this concept is the central defining geopolitical objective of Pakistan's military. It's driven by this long-standing, profound fear of regional encirclement and domination by India, their primary rival.
India looms large in their calculation.
Always. So strategic depth meant maintaining decisive, friendly influence over the government in Kabul. The primary goals were, you could say, twofold.
Okay.
First, prevent Afghanistan from backing domestic Pakistani insurgencies. You mentioned the Balochi and Sindhi independence movements earlier.
Right, keeping internal issues contained.
Exactly. And second, to guarantee a secure, stable Western front should Pakistan face conflict with India to the east. They saw Afghanistan as their buffer zone, essentially their strategic backyard.
So proxies were the tool, the means to achieve that influence in the West.
Precisely.
But their policy of militant sponsorship wasn't just limited to Afghanistan, was it? It was broader. Which specific militant groups were being cultivated in other theaters?
That's a really critical distinction to make. Pakistan sponsored not only groups operating in Afghanistan like the Afghan Taliban and Haqqani, but also jihadi militant groups focused explicitly on Indian-administered Jammu and Kashmir.
Ah, the Eastern Front, too.
Absolutely. These included groups like Hizbul Mujahideen, Lashkar-e-Taiba, or they were responsible for huge attacks. Remember the 2008 Mumbai attack?
Of course. Horrific.
And Jaish-e-Mohammed, Jath-UM, known for the 2019 Pulwama bombing. This kind of dual front of proxy warfare was seen as an indispensable tool for maintaining sovereignty and achieving their geopolitical aims.
And their strategic intent wasn't purely military, right? You mentioned economics earlier. There was a huge economic driver here, too, particularly related to Central Asia.
Absolutely. You can't separate the two. The economic objective was deeply intertwined with security. A controlled, favorable regime in Kabul was seen as essential to facilitating regional integration.
Yeah.
And, most importantly, accessing the energy-rich Central Asian republics, the CARs.
Pipelines, resources.
Exactly. The military establishment viewed this stability, or controlled instability, perhaps, as necessary for constructing vital oil and gas pipelines through Afghanistan. They genuinely believed these projects would bring massive profits and power to Pakistan, fundamentally reshaping its economic future. That was the dream.
But if they needed stability, or at least control for these pipelines and for strategic depth, we have to bring up the elephant in the room. The Durand Line.
Ah, yes. The border itself.
This colonial-era line forms the border, but Kabul has never formally accepted it. How does the contested nature of that 1893 Durand Line factor into this whole need for strategic depth?
That's a huge point, a perpetually thorny issue. The Durand Line, yeah, established by the British way back in 1893, isn't just porous, it's perpetually disputed.
Afghanistan just doesn't recognize it.
Never has. Successive Afghan governments, including the current Afghan Taliban regime, have refused to acknowledge its legitimacy. So for Pakistan, securing that line and preventing cross-border movement is foundational to its idea of sovereignty.
But if Afghanistan denies the line,
Then Pakistan felt it had to use influence, or, well, proxies within Afghanistan to manage its border security. They feared that any weak or unfriendly government in Kabul would inevitably use the border dispute to stir up trouble in the tribal regions, especially among the Pashtun population that straddles the line.
okay, so that adds another layer of complexity to why they felt they needed that influence.
Definitely.
But here is where the strategy shifts from, cynical calculation to just catastrophic failure. The groups Pakistan hoped to control, they became its single greatest internal threat.
This is the blowback, in its purest, bloodiest form. When the Afghan Taliban seized power back in August 2021, Pakistan they expected guaranteed stability. They expected cooperation against groups hostile to Islamabad.
They thought their investment would pay off.
They did. Instead, they arguably received betrayal. What we've seen is a massive surge in violence led by the Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan, the TTP, the Pakistani Taliban.
Who are ideologically similar but target Pakistan.
Exactly. They essentially share ideology with the Afghan Taliban, but their target is the Pakistani state itself.
And the violence has picked up since the Taliban took Kabul.
Dramatically. TTP cross-border terrorism has gained significant momentum since that regime change. Pakistan now openly accuses the Afghan government of harboring these TTP militants on its soil, essentially giving them safe haven.
A claim Kabul denies, naturally.
Emphatically denies it, yes.
And the response, or lack thereof, from the Afghan Taliban government, that seems like a profound indicator of Pakistan's failed expectations. It really proves they are not the reliable partner Pakistan thought they were cultivating.
Precisely. It's not just that the Afghan Taliban has ignored demands to eliminate these terror hubs. Sources actually indicate they've released TTP ranks from prisons.
Released them. Wow.
Yes. And what's fascinating, strategically speaking, is that Kabul now seems to be actively using the TTP factor as a clear instrument of pressure against Islamabad.
Weaponizing the very militants Pakistan used to support.
Essentially, yes. Weaponizing the militants they were supposed to control. This is just a devastating strategic reversal for Pakistan, a complete flip.
Let's talk about the human cost for a moment. Because when we look back at that strategic calculus, that strategic depth idea, was there ever a point where the perceived benefit of this proxy strategy outweighed the immense cost? The scale of domestic sacrifice is just staggering.
It really is.
Terrorist groups have killed more than 22,000 Pakistani civilians since 2002. 22,000.
Yeah.
How do military planners even begin to justify that?
It's virtually impossible to justify that figure from a human perspective. The memory of egregious, senseless attacks, it remains a permanent scar on the nation.
Absolutely.
You just have to look at the 2014 Peshawar Army public school attack. Over 130 children massacred. That level of domestic terrorism, often generated by the very forces the state once patronized or turned a blind eye to, makes it brutally clear that strategic depth wasn't just a failure. It was a catastrophic, self-inflicted wound that has profoundly destabilized the country from within.
And this internal pressure, this undeniable cost, has led to the highest political levels publicly condemning their former allies.
Right. It has. Pakistani Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif recently demanded, very publicly, that the Afghan Taliban undertake concrete measures toward denying their soil be used for transnational terrorism.
That kind of public statement, it really signals the utter breakdown of the quiet understanding, the deniable links they sought to maintain for so many years.
The gloves are off, so to speak.
And this internal blowback, it must create massive external vulnerabilities, too. The instability on Pakistan's western border, that's basically a gift to its regional rivals, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. It's being exploited. Consider the timing we mentioned earlier. The recent escalation in border clashes happened just days after the Afghan Taliban's foreign minister visited New Delhi.
India.
Yeah.
This
highlights how easily India can exploit the diplomatic and security differences between Islamabad and Kabul. They can effectively capitalize on Pakistan's strategic mistakes.
Speaking of India, the recent border crisis on the Eastern Front, Pakistan's eastern border, really illustrates just how severe the security strain is now. We saw a major escalation in April and May of this year, 2025.
That crisis was sharp and immediate. Remember, following a late April terrorist attack in Jammu and Kashmir that killed 26 tourists, mostly Indian, one Nepali India's response was swift.
They launched strikes inside Pakistan.
Targeted strikes on 9 alleged terrorist camps inside Pakistan, claiming to have eliminated over 100 terrorists. Now, whether those numbers are accurate is one thing, but the action itself.
It shows India's willingness to act.
And it demonstrates that while Pakistan is distracted by the TTP blowback in the West, groups like Lati and Gem groups implicated in Mumbai, Pulwama, officially banned continue to operate openly or semi-openly within Pakistani territory. This gives India continuous justification, in their view, for aggressive counteraction.
So pressure from both East and West. This brings us squarely back to the history of Western engagement, particularly the U.S., and the failure of foreign aid to fundamentally change Pakistan's core strategic thinking. Our sources include a pretty compelling historical critique of U.S. policy in the region.
Yes, and the historical evidence does suggest a major failure in U.S. foreign policy incentives, especially when viewed through a lens of, say, taxpayer value.
How so?
Well, the critique often points out the incredible amount of money, taxpayer money, poured into the relationship with what many argue were minimal results in changing Pakistan's core behavior regarding militant groups.
The famous Trump tweet comes to mind.
Exactly. President Trump's 2018 assertion really summed up that widely held conservative critique perfectly. He noted the U.S. gave Pakistan over $33 billion in aid over the last 15 years. For, in his words, nothing but lies and deceit.
Leading to aid suspension.
Leading to the suspension of most military aid. Now, this failure, this perceived failure, demonstrates the futility, some argue, of using financial incentives to alter a strategic calculus as deeply entrenched as strategic depth was.
Money couldn't buy a policy change.
It seems not. The consensus, looking back at this historical data, is that punitive actions, like suspending aid, largely failed to change Pakistan's behavior because militant sponsorship wasn't just a policy choice. It was embedded within the military and intelligence agencies. It had become almost a whole-of-government principle, far less susceptible to external pressure from Washington than perhaps previously thought.
So, a profound misallocation of resources, according to that critique, aimed at correcting what was seen as an almost immutable strategic policy.
That's the argument, yes.
Okay, so the U.S. aid largely failed to prevent this instability. India is exploiting the situation.
Yeah.
And to compound this geopolitical quagmire, we now have China deepening its defense ties with Islamabad. This really isn't just a regional problem anymore, is it?
Absolutely not. The regional terrorism challenge is now intersecting directly with great power rivalry. Pakistan is reportedly utilizing Chinese-origin drones and air defense systems, particularly in contexts involving India.
So China's hardware is in the mix.
It appears so. And this means that every border skirmish, every counter-terror operation indirectly pulls Beijing further into the regional security complex. It blurs the lines between Pakistan's internal security failures, its regional rivalries, and the much larger dynamics of great power competition.
So let's distill this. What does this all mean for you, our listener? It seems Pakistan's long-held strategy using militant proxies as, quote, an important mechanism for maintaining Pakistan's sovereignty has backfired disastrously.
That's the heart of it. They are now forced to fight groups they once covertly armed or, at minimum, tolerated.
The core takeaway is stark then.
It is. Pakistan now faces simultaneous and significant instability on both its western frontier with Afghanistan and its eastern frontier with India. The failure to secure that disputed 1893 Durand Line border, coupled with the TTP blowback, it's made the state profoundly vulnerable.
And this fight, it's not just regional anymore.
No. The fight against terrorism in South Asia is no longer something that can be neatly cordoned off as a distant regional conflict. It clearly touches global strategic competition, wider regional stability, and the very concept of national sovereignty itself.
Indeed. We've seen the enormous bloody cost of this double game. The state that tried to use proxies for power is now, it seems, being actively consumed by them in some ways.
A dangerous cycle.
So the ultimate question, the provocative thought maybe for you to explore after this deep dive, is this. Considering the mounting domestic blowback, the sheer human cost we talked about, and the intense geopolitical pressure from both India and now China getting more involved, what will be the ultimate cost of militant sponsorship on Pakistan's national stability? And what about its relationship with the new Afghan regime?
What concrete measures, to use the Prime Minister's words, will Pakistan actually take next to control the TTP?
And crucially, will they risk escalating the very direct military conflict in Afghanistan that their whole strategic depth policy was designed, ironically, to avoid for all these years.
That's the multi-billion-dollar question facing Islamabad right now, a true strategic crossroads.